Alright guys, in today's video we are going to build an 8 HP 70 for 1,000 plus horsepower and put it into my 1995 Camaro, which we are putting a Vortec 4200 with Bullseye Power turbocharger, and we intend to make around 1,000 wheel horsepower with the deal. Alright, this is a Dodge 8 HP 70. Now, these transmissions came behind the Chargers and Challengers. They also put them into trucks as well. And the way that they get their name is that 8 stands for the number of speeds in the transmission. It has 8 gear ratios that we can choose from. HP is the series of transmission, and then 70 stands for 700 Newton meters of torque, or around 515 pounds-feet of torque in freedom units. Now, this is not even close to what we want, but you can cheat it a little bit, as we have proven in the past in some of our other builds. Now, ZF, the manufacturers of this transmission, made a stronger version. It was called the 8 HP 90. But the problem is that transmission won't work for us either. Now, in order to get the 8 HP 90 to hold more power, what they did is they increased the diameter of the components. In the same way that you would go to a larger diameter brake rotor in your car in order to get more braking force, those transmissions employ larger components with friction areas at larger diameters in order to hold more torque. The problem is that the centrifugal force of moving mass to a larger diameter doesn't allow us to get to the RPM range that we plan to with the red car. Hemis are notorious for only revving to 65 to 7,000 RPM, so for them, completely fine, but we plan to go 8,000 plus, and that's when those transmissions tend to fly apart. So yes, the transmission that is rated for less horsepower is actually the better choice for what we want to do with this car. Now, how one of these transmissions work is it has a series of planetary gear sets in it, and it engages or disengages those planetary gear sets with these things called clutch packs. And they have a bunch of these things inside of them called clutches. And similarly to a manual transmission car with a high performance clutch, they have a multi-disc arrangement. So they have clutches and steels that are stacked on top of one another in order to get more friction surface area. So the majority of the upgrades that you're going to see today are going to be in the trend of either increasing the holding capacity of these clutch packs, or going to stronger components which are able to withstand the forces that we're about to put them to. And since we're only going to be using 5 of the 8 speeds that are available in this transmission on the racetrack, we're going to give you 5 improvements that we're going to make to this transmission in order to make it hold more horsepower. So let's get into it. The first method to getting these transmissions to hold more power is to apply more pressure. So basically how one of these transmissions work is it's a series of clutch packs that kind of look like this. And there's a hydraulic pump which generates hydraulic pressure, which allows you to apply these pistons and clamp these clutches and steels together and apply or unapply certain planetaries in the transmission. And every time it does this, it has a certain holding capacity before these clutches start to slip and no longer apply. Basically, the pump in the transmission will generate a certain amount of pressure. Then the TCM will read that pressure, and then it will bleed off that pressure with that little solenoid there in order to regulate the pressure. And the factory is fairly conservative with how much pressure that it generates. Now, some systems will literally have you flip this thing over, which I gotta be careful because I don't want to lose all my bolts. And they will literally have you take that transmission controller out and replace it with another unit. that will be a little more aggressive, or at the very least tunable, on how this solenoid operates. If you think about it, if we generate more transmission line pressure, we can clamp these clutches much harder, and that will proportionally increase the amount of force or the amount of torque that these clutches have as far as holding capacity goes. In the case of what we're going to do with the red car, we are going to run a max ECU, and they offer a really nice package where you literally reflash the factory controller that is already installed in the transmission, and it doesn't require a multi-$1,000 upgrade of a transmission controller. So it will, in essence, bleed off less fluid, generate more pressure, or at least in a more aggressive manner, which will apply more force to the components. And that's what we're doing in the Trailblazer. That is why it is able to hold 700 pound-feet with a bone stock transmission. But like I said at the beginning of the video, we want to make 1,000 horsepower. So we're going to have to do a little more than that. So let's get on to more upgrades. All right, now we can undo our pump bolts. Now you got to be careful, these are aluminum, so if it feels like they're not coming out nice, then make sure you're a little careful with them. And before you go prying on this pump, make sure that you remove your lockup O-ring. Just like a 4L80E, you can't get the pump past the input shaft unless you remove this O-ring here. Let's pry up on the pump here, and then once it starts to move, you just grab the thing like so. Now if we take this pump assembly and we flip it over, that brings us to our first clutch pack. And these are the A clutches, right in here. Alright, that is our snap ring. So now we can pull these clutches out, give them a look-see. Alright, let's see how this transmission was doing. This thing looks fine. This transmission supposedly had 30,000 miles on it, so looks like our A clutches have 5 friction elements. So the next method is to get more out of the friction area that you have in your transmission from the factory. And the way that we're going to do that is we are going to be upgrading the clutch back face for the A and the D clutches in this transmission. Now this right here, this is the factory back plate for the A clutches. And we are going to be upgrading it to this guy right here. If we compare the two to one another, you can see that the upgraded Sonax unit is much thicker, and this should be able to hold this plane here much more flat and allow us to take advantage of the friction area that is available on the A clutches in a much better way. So let's get this guy installed and get on with the next upgrade. If we look at the friction here, you can actually see how the wear pattern here has sort of a bevel to it. And that's because this guy right here is very flimsy. So let's get this guy replaced so that we can better apply the A clutches. Good to go. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is a 5-gallon bucket. And this is a 5-gallon bucket with a hole drilled in it. It's not going to make a very good bucket anymore, but today we're going to use this as our transmission rebuild stand. So, let's get to work. You're going to want to be really careful when you're taking out these snap rings. I bought these special tools in order to protect the aluminum drums. They will split out if you're not careful. They are not designed to be pried against, so make sure that you take precaution when you do this job yourself. Alright, this is the D clutch, and we are going to replace this clutch back face as well to a heavier duty unit from Sonex. So let's get this popped out. There is the difference, big difference. All right, that one's done. Next up is our E and our C clutches, which we will be replacing the clutch hub in order to accept more clutches, but we'll get into that in a second. We once again have to use this special tool in order to not damage the drum. It just slips around here, and it allows us to once again peel this snap ring out. All right, so now we can pull this assembly out. Get rid of this. Pull this snap ring out. All right, now we're on to our E clutch drum, which is this guy right here. And then below it, we have our C clutch drum, or clutch hub. And we will be replacing that as well. So the next modification that we are going to make is we are going to increase our friction surface area. We sort of alluded to this earlier, but the best way to do that is to increase the clutch count in our transmission. Now, there's only a certain amount of room inside of here for clutches and steels before it will get bound up and not be able to work. And there's a couple ways that we can pack more clutches into this drum itself. There are a couple companies that sell thinner steels, like what you see here, in order to be able to pack another clutch inside of there, but we chose to go a different direction. And that is mainly due to cost. And it will also knock out two birds with one stone, which we'll get into a little bit later. But we decided to go with an extra capacity drum. What this does is it basically moves this face right here at the bottom down a bit so that we have more room to pack more clutches in. We can go with the same thickness steels as what comes from factory. And what we're literally going to do is take another transmission apart, which we had laying around that had a damaged input shaft. And we're going to steal clutches and steels out of it and install them into our extended capacity clutch hub. This keeps the cost down because it's way cheaper to just go out and buy another transmission than it is to buy new clutches and steels for these things, unfortunately. And since we're going from a 5 clutch arrangement to a 6 clutch arrangement, we are getting an additional 20% holding force on the clutch pack. Ooh, that was close. There it goes. Ta-da! Don't even need them. The next method is to go to higher strength components. And one of those higher strength components is this E-clutch hub. We talked about this earlier when we talked about going to the extended capacity clutch hub, and that also doubles as a strength improvement. The extended capacity clutch hub is made out of 7075 aluminum, which is 3 times stronger than this factory stuff, which is just plain old cast aluminum. These clutch hubs are known to fly apart if you put too much power to them, so it's a good idea to upgrade to a beefier unit in order to hold more horsepower. Now, the last improvement for the transmission is actually not with the transmission, it's with the torque converter. The torque converter actually can hold a fair amount of power, but it's the lockup clutches that begin to struggle at the horsepower level that we are looking to make. Now, the factory converters come with a triple disc lockup, which is actually pretty impressive from a factory piece. Around the 800 to 900 wheel horsepower mark is where the lockup clutches start to struggle. The 8 HPs rely on the lockup capability of the torque converter pretty heavily, so it's important to leave this intact. And in order to get us to where we want to go, we have this guy right here. This is a Circle D billet 8 HP 70 torque converter that they just came out with. And this has a quad disc lockup. This billet back face here houses the lockup clutches and steels, and this should get us where we need to go. I called up the guys at Circle D. They spec'd this thing out for our goals with the car, and I'm super excited that we were able to get a hold of this thing in time for Sick Week. So this should help us with our 1,000 wheel horsepower goals. And big thanks to the guys over at Circle D for helping us out. Alright guys, so here is something that you should probably know if you're doing these mods to your transmission that I had to find out the hard way. And that is with the E-clutch hub. This is one of the parts that we are upgrading in the transmission, and they come in 2 different splines. Now, if you look at how they sell these clutch hubs here, they will say that the 38 spline is for an 8 HP 70, and a 48 spline is for an 8 HP 75. Well, we don't own an 8 HP 75, and I can tell you that we have multiple 8 HP 70s that came with the 48 spline. And the one that we were building for the red car happened to have a 48 spline as well. Now, I ordered a 38 spline extra capacity clutch hub. It actually splines into this piece here. And if I can get this thing to line up, it's kind of difficult. You can see that it lines up there, and no bueno on that one. So make sure that you get the right piece for your transmission. Luckily, we had another transmission that was already apart that had the 38 spline component for this piece right here. So I was able to just swap them out, but if you're doing this mod to your transmission and you only have one, make sure that you order the right component. All right, let's keep going. We'll see that one. Okay, that's it. Alright guys, building a transmission is kind of like making a sandwich. You have to stack all of the ingredients up in the right order, and as you guys saw earlier in the video, we just changed a few ingredients in the sandwich. And because of that, we have changed the overall end play of the transmission. Now, the difference with a transmission from a sandwich is these ingredients need to add up to the same overall height as what they did before, or else you need to make compensations for it. There are quite a few rollerized bearings in this transmission, and everything grows and moves and needs room to move in this transmission. So you need to leave a little bit of clearance in order to do that. Now, the factory does it with this guy right here. This is just a thrust washer, and it goes down right down in here. And this, I assume, is tuned to a particular thickness, depending on the manufacturing tolerance of everything. Now, as we talked about, we just changed 2 of the ingredients in the sandwich, and we have found out that this old thrust washer is too thick. So I went on the internet and tried to find, any selective washers that may be available, and I couldn't find much, but I was able to find this guy right here. It is a 31,000 shim, and it is a 2 3/4 OD with a 2-inch ID, and I think that this will get us where we need to go. But we will put this thing all back together, and we will find out if there is enough clearance in a second. So let's get the pump installed and see what we got. There it goes. There, good enough. Before we bolt this up in, I just wanted to promote the adapter kit to go from a Vortec 4200 to a Dodge 8HP. This is actually a kit that I designed to go from a 6-bolt bolting arrangement to a 3-bolt arrangement like what you see on the Atlas. It uses the original crank flange, and it comes with the adapter plate, the adapter sleeve, and these little foot adapters and the special bolts that go in here. I actually sort of licensed the design to the guys over at Atlas Industries. They have it for sale. Go check it out. You know, with all that extra power that the transmission's going to be able to hold, we could put one of these in the car.
Where'd you get that?
Jimmy Dale sent it to me.
Oh boy, this is gonna be good.
Alright guys, now it's time to talk about the fuel system. And for that, we have what we have laid out here on the floor. Now, to tell you the story on how this came to be, we need to go back to PRI last year. We were walking by the Nitrous Express booth, mainly checking out Keith Turk's land speed car, and this goofy guy walked up to us and started telling us about how much he enjoyed our channel. I immediately recognized him, but I was a little starstruck, I'll be honest. And that guy turned out to be Jimmy Dale, Mr. Nitrous Express himself. And I came to find out that Snow Performance was actually owned by Nitrous Express. And Snow Performance has quite the fuel-fitting lineup. And that is what we have laid out here. Now, if you're running a car where you intend to run E85 or some sort of alcohol like methanol or any mix in between, you should really consider running a PTFE or Teflon style fuel line. The problem is that alcohol will break down your standard rubber fuel lines, and Teflon is the preferred material for standing up to the abuse. Teflon has a very high temperature rating, and it is fully compatible for the lifetime of your vehicle with alcohol-based fuels. And Snow Performance has a full lineup of PTFE lines and fittings. And what they have sent us for the red car is their sort of universal kit. This includes all the fittings that you're going to need in order to run a feed and return. And this is sort of the kit for the guys who don't know what to order, and it's sort of a, send me everything I need and I don't want to think about it too much kind of fuel line kit. It comes with a ton of fittings and all of the clamps and your filters and everything that you're going to need in order to run the fuel lines in your car. It comes with a 10 feed and a 8 return and a lot of ORB fittings and a Y fitting for just about anything you would want to do. In fact, it's way cheaper to buy all these parts in bulk than it is to purchase them individually. So this is definitely a very nice kit. They also hooked us up with a fuel pressure regulator that you can see right here. And the part that I am very excited about is this guy right here. This is a triple pump drop-in fuel cell style fuel pump sender. And basically how this thing works is it takes 3 Walbro style pumps and it has this nice sock on the bottom which incorporates all 3 of them, and then it collects all of the outputs from the pump and puts it into a common outlet from your fuel pump hat, and has your standard 12-volt fuel cell interface for the top of the thing, and basically replaces your fuel fill lid on your sort of universal fuel cell. Now, the guys over at Snow Performance suggested that we go with a triple pump arrangement like this for our horsepower goals. They suggested that we stage these things in, meaning you start with 1 pump and then you add the other 2 as the boost increases in the car. And the reason for this is you want to keep the fuel flow in the vehicle to be close to where the actual demands of the engine are. As you pump fluid through any style of pump, there's going to be a temperature increase in the fluid. And if we were to run, say, all 3 of these all at once, all the time, we would be bypassing a lot of that fuel at like idle speeds when we're not making any boost, because the engine doesn't require that amount of fuel. And what happens there is you kind of get into a feedback loop where you're pumping all the fluid up to the engine and then bypassing it to the fuel cell and then doing the whole process all over again. And what ends up happening is you end up overheating your fuel, and at some point that fuel will start turning to vapor and start vapor locking stuff, or you might be running down the street and as the temperature increases on your fuel, the density will start to go down, and you'll start seeing the air fuel gauge on your car start to go lean for seemingly no reason. And this is the type of expertise you get when you work with the guys over at Snow Performance. They really look at what you're doing and consider your goals and suggest the product that will meet your goals in the best way possible. It's really good to be working with guys like this, and I'm excited to get this onto the car. And maybe we'll do a little test down the road where we run multiple pumps and show how the temperature increases at a much more rapid rate than if you were to stage them in like you really should be doing. So let's get to work installing these fittings. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. And that is this right here. Now, I don't know if this is some kind of drug thing where they're trying to give me a sample and get me hooked, but I guess I'm here for it. What you're looking at here is a 10-pound dry nitrous kit, meaning it only has a nitrous solenoid. There is no fuel solenoid. So we will have to supply the supplemental fuel for the nitrous kit with the fuel injectors that are in the individual ports, which is honestly the way that I prefer to do it. But it's going to be exciting to run nitrous on the car. I'm going to be honest, I've never experienced the hit of a nitrous system. I have never put nitrous on a car. My dad obviously has many, many times. I've been around it, you know, so I know how it works. I've never personally tried it. I've never felt the hit of the engine just instantly making 150 more horsepower. So it'll be a fun little experiment, I guess, for everybody involved. You guys are going to get to watch me experience nitrous for the very first time. And personally, I'm the kind of guy who likes to try all kinds of weird and wacky things. So I guess nitrous and boost, you know, we can have some fun with that. And, you know, if the car has trouble spooling, we can fix that. So I got to say a huge thanks to Jimmy Dale and the guys over at Nitrous Express. But there's one more thing that I have to talk about, and that is something for you guys out there. If you use coupon code NIVLAC57 at your checkout on Snow Performance or Nitrous Express, you will get a 10% discount on anything that you buy, and it also gives us a small kickback. So if you want to support the channel, that is a great way to do it. So go get yourself a nitrous system. Maybe you'll get hooked on it too. All right, let's get to work. All right, so this is the fuel cell that we are going to go with on the red car. And the reason that we decided to go with this fuel cell is that it fits down into the spare tire well in the trunk of the car really, really well. Now, first thing you're going to notice is that it is a 6-bolt style fuel fill lid. So what we're going to do is remove this guy here and then cut the hole out and get it sized up for the 12-bolt setup and convert this thing to a 12-bolt style of lid. So let's get this thing out and start the conversion process. Alright guys, I hope you guys got a lot of use out of today's video. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that some of you that are starting to get into these 8 HP transmissions are able to use this information. Personally, I have found that the information on the 8HP stuff has been a little bit lacking. Frankly, it's hard to find information on any transmission out there. It's almost like people are trying to make a business out of this stuff and they don't want to share their secrets. So I'm hoping that the upgrades that we have made to the transmission will help us to make the transmission hold up for what we want to do with it. And I have reasonable confidence that we will get there. I know somebody who has made similar mods to their transmission and are getting similar results to what we're trying to do, but you don't know until you try. So wish us luck, and hopefully we can put on an impressive show. But I need to get back to work on this thing because we're down to like 2 weeks left for this deal. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. Make sure that you share it with one of your friends. Go buy a t-shirt, and we will see you in the next one. What do you think, Mom?
Well, when is Jimmy gonna send one for my truck?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him. All right. Thanks, Nitrous Express.
Yeah, thanks, Nitrous Express. We love the new bottle.
It was more than just a bottle, Mom.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
All right. See you guys.